On this special day, we honor department members and citizens who have distinguished themselves in their unselfish acts of courage and outstanding community engagement. The awards committee is comprised of 10 master police officers from every command and 1 lieutenant. The committee has the responsibility to review, investigate, recommend awards for citizens as well as members of the department based on the award selection criteria. I would like to thank this year's award committee members for their attention to detail and dedication. To the reward recipients, we are honored to present this program as our way to say thank you for your dedication to our community and to our department. We also thank your family for their support in what you do every day. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to ask our mayor, the Honorable Louis Jones, to step to the podium.
Good afternoon. It's a privilege for me to be here and an honor to be here with all of you today. Twice a year we come together to publicly recognize and reward individuals, both uniformed and civilian, for extraordinary acts of heroism. On this special occasion, we take the time to thank these men and women who are true heroes in our community. The heroic actions of these individuals help keep us safe and secure. And Virginia Beach is the safest city of its size in the United States because of the great work of our law enforcement officers and the extraordinary efforts of our citizens. Our police officers and residents in every neighborhood have built strong relationships, and crime is as low today as it was in 1963, the year Virginia Beach and Princess Anne County merged with a much lower population. And today, close to 90% of our residents believe that Virginia Beach is a safe place to live. That speaks volumes about the work being done throughout our criminal justice system and the community. So on behalf of the Virginia Beach City Council and your fellow citizens, I applaud each and every one of you and thank you for your courage and dedication to the people of Virginia Beach. Thank you so much.
At this time, Chief Cervera will come to the podium for opening remarks.
Brief opening remarks. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Yeah, okay, this is not a funeral. This is a happy occasion. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'll be very brief. I've told this story, and most of my staff has heard it before, so for those of you who have heard it before, I apologize. A number of years ago, when I was thinking about coming into police work, there was a book that was written, and it was entitled Super Cops. It was about a couple of New York City narcotics detectives who did some crazy things that if our officers did it today, they'd probably be fired. But this is the early 70s. It was a different world. And I thought about that book when I thought about today's occasion, Super Cops. But you see, there's no such thing as a super cop. Cops are ordinary men and women, I've read, who do extraordinary things, right? Well, are they so ordinary? I was giving a talk not too long ago to some businessmen. They all happen to be engineers. Now, let me put this in proper perspective. I could never be an engineer. I have no idea what advanced calculus is, what derivatives are, anything beyond addition and subtraction, I'm lost. But they were engineers. So I asked them, quick question, when you guys go to work, men and women, do you put a T-shirt on before you put your bulletproof vest, or do you just wear your bulletproof vest on your skin? And they looked at me and said, I don't wear a bulletproof vest. I said, serious, you go to work without a bulletproof vest on? Okay. So well, let me ask you the next question. When you go to work and you got to do your press check to make sure you got a round in the chamber, you got kids, do you do that in the house, or do you wait till you get to the car and do your quick press check so you know one's in the chamber? And they said, we don't carry guns to work. I said, you don't carry guns, you don't wear bulletproof vests. Okay, let me ask the third question. What is your favorite shift? Midnights, afternoons, or days? They said, we all work days. I said, okay, let's put this in its proper perspective. The men and women who work in the police department, they have bulletproof vests, they carry guns, and they work shifts. They do that so the rest of the world could go to work in safety and security. So to the men and women of Virginia Beach Police Department, yeah, you are super cops in my mind. You do an absolute fantastic job every day in every way, and I say it every time. You do it for people you've never met. You do it for people you have no connection to, and you do it for people you will never see again. So thank you, guys.
And now for the presentation of awards. When I call your name, please enter the stage to your right. Amy Linder and Mary Schiffett. Amy and Mary have served the Virginia Beach Police Mounted Unit volunteers for a combined total time of 10 years. These ladies are very dedicated volunteers responding to the Mounted Unit facility every Monday through Thursday. For those combined 10 years, Mary has volunteered 1,091 hours and Amy has volunteered 1,243 hours. They work without compensation or benefits for the good of the unit and the care and the animals in their care. They follow the same policies, procedures, and standards as paid volunteers, paid employees. They assist with bathing all assigned horses for duty and caring for the horses remaining in the barn. These tasks include maintaining water troughs, cleaning stalls, checking for paddocks for potential hazards, and keeping the facility presentable to the public view. These tasks require working in all types of weather conditions, the heat of the summer, the cold of the winter, and in the muddy and dry, dusty settings. In November of 2017, the Friends of the Virginia Beach Mounted Patrol hosted a beach ride at Little Island Park. There were 90 riders on horseback from all over the state that were permitted to ride on the beach at Sandbridge. However, all of the manure had to be removed from the beach at the conclusion of the event. Amy and Mary volunteered for 6 hours on that extremely cold and windy Saturday to perform that not-so-desirable task. This is just one example of their tireless dedication to the unit. Amy and Mary are truly assets to the City of Virginia Beach, the Virginia Beach Police Department, the Mounted Patrol, and the citizens of our city. For these reasons, Mary and Amy are being recognized as the department's Volunteers of the Year. Sergeant William Gervin, MPO Holly Ellison, MPO Jerry May, MPO Joseph Schneider, Special Accommodation. Due to prior commitments, Officers Ellison, Schneider, and May are unable to join us this afternoon. In March of 2016, Chief Cervera gave the direction to Sergeant Gervin and the police selection team to put 50 new recruits into the 62nd Police Academy, which was set to begin the following September. The team was able to hire 62 recruits, with 59 of them starting on day one. This was the second largest number of new recruits in the history of the department and the largest in close to 20 years. In the fall of 2016, Chief Cervera asked for another 50 recruits for the 63rd Police Academy. This was slated to begin March of 2017. On that day of the academy, 54 new recruits entered the classroom. Additionally, the staff was able to fill 59 recruit seats for the 64th Police Academy that started in September 2017. Hiring more than 100 new recruits within a 12-month period was very taxing for a small selection staff, but the team stepped up to the challenge in an outstanding manner to forward the mission of our department. For these reasons, Sergeant Gervin, MPOs Ellison, May, and Schneider are being awarded the department's unit citation. I'd like to take a brief moment to also welcome Deputy City Manager Ron Williams to our audience this evening. Master Police Officers Seth Cope and Daniel Fogarty, special commendation. On October 22nd, 2017, Marine Patrol Officers Fogarty and Cope were transiting the police vessel through the Lynnhaven River turning basin when they observed a small boat precariously near the sandbars. A short distance from the vessel appeared to be a man in the water. They maneuvered their police vessel closer to being mindful of the strong currents, wind, and sea conditions in the area. The elderly male, clearly in distress, was gesturing for them to come closer. Nearby was another boat with occupants who were attempting to help the man, but were having difficulty due to the extremely swift and dangerous currents. Despite the sea conditions and being fully aware of the potential safety issue for themselves and their vessel, MPO Fogarty expertly maneuvered his vessel close enough to allow MPO Cope to throw the frightened man a life ring. At this point, the officers were still faced with the fact that they could not cut their engines due to the currents that would push them towards the Lesnar Bridge pilings or hard aground. Additionally, the upper edges of the side of the vessel were extremely tall, making it difficult for the others to pull a panicked person from the vessel onto the vessel. MPO Fogarty had to leave the helm of the vessel to assist MPO Cope in retrieving the man from the water. Once aboard, the officers notified EMS, who responded to the Lynnhaven boat ramp, where they assisted the 73-year-old man where he was evaluated. For these reasons, MPOs Cope and Fogarty are awarded the department's special commendation. Master Police Officer Dennis Pierce, special commendation. On November 29, 2017, MPO Pierce was dispatched to the 1100 block of First Colonial Road for a report of a 64-year-old man in cardiac arrest. In less than 2 minutes, MPO Pierce arrived on scene and located a patient inside the facility of a nurse with nurses on scene attempting CPR. The nurses appeared fatigued from the long chest compressions, so MPO Pierce took over resuscitation efforts. MPO Pierce applied a set of quality chest compressions and was able to revive the patient. Shortly after, EMS arrived on scene and transported the semi-conscious patient to the hospital. Several days later, it was reported the man was still recovering in ICU. Undeniably, MPO Pierce's action helped save this man's life, and for these reasons, MPO Pierce is awarded the department's special commendation. Lieutenant William Zelms, MPO Paul Bryant, MPO Frederick Nunn, MPO James Hundley, MPO Christopher Jenajon, MPO Melissa Johnston, Officer Chase Eisenberg, Officer Cameron Colmer, and Officer Elitha Yeager. Special commendation. Due to prior commitments, Officers Nunn and Hundley are unable to join us this afternoon. Over the course of 2017, it became clear that the most significant and pervasive crime problems facing the Sandbridge community was theft. We noted a number of thefts from unlocked parked cars, thefts of firearms, burglaries of residences, and thefts from building materials. This community is remote in nature and has a high number of seasonal and short-term rental properties with a high number of service vehicles that flood the area throughout each day. These are vulnerable areas that make it difficult to establish sufficient patrol presence to act as a deterrent. Despite these challenges, something needed to be done to address the issues associated to this community. Officers Jen and John Colmer, Bryant, and Eisenberg were all selected to serve as members of the Sandbridge crew working in the area. Often alone, through the day and evening shift, 7 days a week in the spring and summer seasons, these 4 officers worked with the precinct crime analysis officers Hundley and Johnston, who reviewed crime data to find patterns, and giving that information to these officers, they adjusted patrol tactics accordingly. The officers followed up on suspicious activity and nuisance complaints and engaged the community outreach by attending civic league meetings, sharing relevant information and focus their residents on what they could do to make their neighborhoods less attractive to thieves. The officers also worked with realty company representatives, encouraging them to reduce the risk by registering valuable property, as well as urging them to monitor their properties with greater frequency. The officers collaborated with Detectives Nunn and Yeager to discuss planned patrols, surveillance, and ongoing operations. The team worked together effectively on numerous cases, and one in particular was a significant series of burglaries. They made an arrest of a serial thief, which was highlighted in a local newspaper. Lieutenant Zelms also played a substantial role in helping this team by exploring his expertise of video management system. As a result of the tireless work conducted by this group of officers, crime in Sandbridge area dropped by 76%. For these reasons, Lieutenant Zelms, MPO Bryant, MPO Nunn, Hundley, Jenna John, Johnson, Officer Eisenberg, Colmer, and Yeager are awarded the Department's Special Commendation. Sergeant Michael Banks, Sergeant Lonnie Kane, Sergeant William Gervin, MPO Catherine Wilson, MPO Joshua Massel, Humanitarian Award. Due to prior commitments, Sergeant Kane and Officer Massel are unable to join us this evening. This is a new award that was created in the partnership with the Human Rights Commission. At this time, I'd like to introduce the Human Rights Commission Chairman, Raj Islam.
Thank you. On behalf of the Human Rights Commission, I'd like to thank Chief Cervera for inviting us to be part of today's ceremony. The mission of the HRC is to advocate for the human rights of the residents of the city of Virginia Beach. We accomplish our mission through various educational and informational programs, community and departmental partnerships, and by highlighting the efforts of the others who dedicate their time, passion, and energy to promote inclusiveness, humanitarianism, and to advocate for the human rights of our city. Now, we decided to make this a special award and create it from the HRC because we found that there's a significant gap, because everything that the officers here in Virginia Beach do goes above and beyond. So we wanted to make sure that we could identify something within the Human Rights Commission and award these officers. In partnership with the Virginia Beach Police Department, the HRC has developed the Virginia Beach Police Department Humanitarian Ribbon. The Humanitarian Ribbon is awarded to any member of law enforcement for actions or achievements that go above and beyond. So for the first one, this will be the very first time we're doing it. We actually developed this at the beginning of 2017, and because of scheduling and things like that, we're now presenting these. The Fair and Impartial Policing Program seeks to train officers to be aware of their implicit bias, which can have a strong influence on the behavior and decision making. The instructors for the Fair and Impartial Policing Program attended over 40 hours of training, spent countless hours preparing, organizing, and developing a comprehensive program that was implemented department-wide. These instructors volunteered to take on these roles, and sometimes taking on this daunting assignment, but remained committed into what they were doing. The time, research, and every team approach that was involved in crafting this material in a manner that created a non-threatening, non-accusatory environment for critical exchange of officers greatly expanded the understanding and awareness of cultural diversity and advocacy of human rights for all people. Please join me in honoring the first recipients of the Virginia Beach Police Department Humanitarian Award Ribbon, and that would go to Sergeant Michael Banks, Sergeant Lonnie Kane, Sergeant William Gervin, and Detective Catherine Wilson. And there's one person that could not be here today, correct? And that was Detective Josh Massel. I'm just going to read his portion of it. Detective Massell has shown his selfless commitment to serve some of our most vulnerable citizens. His willingness to go above and beyond his regular duties to assist people struggling with homelessness began with his interactions with a couple in 2015. Detective Massell chose to assist the soon-to-be parents in finding their shelter from cold weather that evening, and his generosity didn't stop there. He organized a collection of clothing and other items for the family and their newborn child and worked to find couple employment and permanent housing, all in his own time. His generous actions to help people in difficult circumstances continue today, such as organizing clothing and blanket drives that have potential to help save lives. He's an example of achieving his core responsibilities as an officer while maintaining a commitment to humanitarianism. Please join me in honoring Detective Josh Massell. Thank you.
Sergeant Rachel Wiggin, MPO Matt Kreiner, MPO Michael Jandra, MPO Christian Wright, Officer Jacob Bott, Officer Edward Ross Filio, Officer Fernandez Rizzo, Officer Edward Ryan. Unit citation. Due to prior commitment, Officer Jandro is unable to attend tonight. During 2017, the 4th Precinct Community-Oriented Policing Squad conducted several long-term investigations that resulted in search warrants and common nuisance homes in the 4th Precinct. In addition to conducting these types of investigations, the squad used proactive patrol techniques to help eliminate crime in the city. One such example was that involving Officers Bott and Ryan, in which they located a parked car in a dead-end street that smelled of marijuana. A search of the occupant and the vehicle recovered marijuana, 2 stolen firearms, one of which was part of an ATF investigation from another state. This squad has developed a strong relationship with probation and parole and initiated the sex offender sweep. They proactively check on residents of those on probation and parole to ensure that they are living within their court restrictions. The squad reached out to communities, attended civic league meetings on their scheduled nights off, and participated in annual community surveys in all 4 precincts. They also set up numerous bike rodeos for churches and Boy Scout troops throughout the year. It has been clear that their progressive outreach to the community and amongst the youth is working, and it demonstrates a positive example for our community initiative and interaction. In January 2017, the squad worked an investigation that led to the discovery of a clandestine methamphetamine laboratory. Those involved were arrested and charged with manufacturing methamphetamines and child endangerment. Several other proactive investigations led to search warrants resulting in the confiscation of narcotics, to include marijuana, LSD, heroin, prescription narcotics, along with distribution materials and U.S. currency. The accomplishments of the 4th Precinct Community-Oriented Policing Squad are not only a testimony to themselves, but to the Virginia Beach Police Department. For these reasons, Sergeant Wiggin, MPO Kreiner, Jandro, Wright, Officers Bott, Filio, and Rizzo, and Ryan are awarded the department's unit citation. Sergeant Scott Merce, Sergeant Nicole Cosmos, MPO Colton Daniels, MPO Caleb Davey, MPO Amy Edwards, MPO Lannis Geluso, MPO Cynthia Santiago, and MPO Tricia Shelton. Unit citation. I apologize. At the time that this was written, Sergeant Merce, well, he was a sergeant at the time, now he's a lieutenant, and also Cosmos was an MPO, now she's a sergeant. I apologize. Due to a prior commitment, Officer Santiago is unable to attend this evening. The Domestic Violence Unit and Missing Persons Unit jointly consist of 7 detectives, 4 assigned to the Domestic Violence Unit and 3 to the Missing Persons Unit. These detectives have shared job responsibilities and perform in an outstanding manner to forward the police department's mission in creating a safer community, increasing the quality of life for citizens, and using innovative techniques to solve crimes. The following example highlights the unit's outstanding dedication. On September 18, 2017, at approximately 8 p.m., Detective Shelton received a phone call from a Norfolk officer. The officer reported that a citizen had found a cell phone earlier in the morning, but it was not reported until approximately 6 p.m. The Norfolk officer learned that the owner of the cell phone had not been heard from since she had left for work early that morning. Detective Shelton contacted the parents of the missing person as well as the victim's employer, who reported that the missing person had failed to show up for work and did not show up for a day in class. Detective Shelton's instincts led her to believe this case was suspicious in nature, despite the required evidence to escalate protocol. Due to Detective Shelton's certainty that the situation was dire, she reported to work extremely earlier the next morning to begin investigating and exploring leads to confirm her instinct. The combination of the domestic violence unit and the missing persons detective immediately began searching the areas of Norfolk to discover evidence surrounding the disappearance. Within the day, the team discovered evidence of potential abduction, thus documenting exigency. The unit reached out for the public's assistance in locating the victim, which would ultimately start the clock on the investigation that lasted for weeks. During those weeks, the unit operated with no days off, working an additional 193 hours beyond their normal scheduling, and led the multi-jurisdictional task force that consisted of the Virginia Beach Police Department, Norfolk Police Department, NCIS, and the FBI. Within the first 3 days of the investigation, evidence indicated the abduction occurred in another jurisdiction. Even though the burden ultimately resided with the federal agency, the unit's proficiency and dedication kept them as the lead and directing agency of the task force. Multiple times, the team conducted briefings and directed the actions of more than 40 members of various agencies. This investigation quickly made national attention. With a significant amount of media coverage, it required a discerning balance to keep the victim's parents informed and emotionally supported, while still preserving the integrity of what would ultimately become a federal homicide investigation. Detective Shelton was flawless in her ability to direct and be empathetic with the parents while maintaining a firm protection of the case information. Everyone understood the significance of this case and volunteered to cancel their days off and reschedule personal affairs. The entire unit modeled self-sacrifice and dedication with the efforts they made in attempting to locate the victim. When the primary suspect and person of interest in this case would not provide information to the task force members, they requested the assistance of Detective Shelton, who successfully obtained information that became paramount in the investigation. When tragedy occurred, members of the department's domestic violence unit and missing persons unit rose to the occasion. No matter what the challenge they encountered, they exemplified integrity. For these reasons, Lieutenant Merce, Sergeant Cosmos, MPO Daniels, MPO Davey, MPO Edwards, MPO Geluso, Santiago, and Shelton are awarded the department's unit citation. Sergeant Jennifer Johannesson, Officer Whitley Andre, Officer Joshua Blackford, Officer Zachary Harrington, Officer Andrew Houston, Officer Lee O'Kennick, and Officer Travis Russell. Unit citation. Due to prior commitments, Sergeant Johannesson, Officers O'Kennick, and Russell are unable to join us. On October 18, 2016, the recruits of Class 62 and their squad leader were assigned to help Operation Blessing for the damage caused by Hurricane Matthew. Just take note, at the time that this occurred, Sergeant Johannesson was an MPO. MPO Johannesson was appointed as the team leader, and at the time, recruits Andre, Blackford, Harrington, Houston, O'Keefe, and Russell. The first work order was for that of the residents in the 3200 block of Deer Point Drive. Upon arrival, MPO Johannesson introduced herself to the homeowner, a 70-year-old widow. The homeowner began crying with such relief when she learned that those present were there to help her. It was learned that the woman had no insurance and was physically not able to handle the labor that was needed to be done. Jennifer's team spent 2 days working in the house, knocking out drywall, breaking and scraping hardwood floors, and removing debris and furniture. At the completion of the work order, Jennifer asked the homeowner if she had anyone to help her move heavy items back into the residence. Unfortunately, she did not. Jennifer provided the homeowner her personal cell phone number and told her to call once everything was fixed, and she would personally come back and move furniture into the home. At the end of January, the homeowner called Jennifer asking for help. Jennifer told her team about the request and advised them that she was going there voluntarily. Her team replied to her, "If our leader is going, so are we." It has, without a doubt, made a lifelong impact on this homeowner. For going above their call for duty, Sergeant Jennifer Johannesson, Officer Andre Blackford, Harrington, Houston, O'Connick, and Russell are awarded the department's unit citation. Officer Andrew Houston. Life-Saving Award. On July 27, 2017, Officer Houston was dispatched to a medical emergency in the 200 block of Greenwood Lane involving a man pinned under his lawnmower. The case comments indicated that the man was mowing the grass, had cut his leg, and was missing toes, and that his foot was still under the mower blade. Officer Houston determined that the victim was suffering from a life-threatening injury and that he needed to stop the profuse bleeding. He applied his department-issued combat application tourniquet, ceasing the rapid blood loss. The man was stabilized by EMS and transported to a local hospital. Due to the decisive, immediate action taken by Officer Houston in applying the tourniquet to the man's partially amputated leg, without a doubt saved the man's life. For these reasons, Officer Andrew Houston is awarded the department's life-saving medal. All right, let's see if I can do this without making a mistake. Officer Michael Cook, Officer Ryan Cook, Officer Brian Kreitzman, life-saving. On August 19, 2017, officers were dispatched to the 7-Eleven in the 5100 block of Virginia Beach Boulevard for a report of a stabbing. Officers Michael Cook, Ryan Cook, and Brian Kreitzman arrived simultaneously. Officers Ryan Cook and Brian Kreitzman used their vehicles to block the entrance to the business as Officer Michael Cook immediately made contact with the victim, who was suffering from a eviscerated wound to the abdomen. Officer Kreitzman and Ryan Cook grabbed their Go medical bags to assist Officer Michael Cook render aid to the victim. Utilizing the medical items from the Go bag, the officers covered the wound, applied pressure in an attempt to stop the significant loss of blood that was occurring. The officers were able to obtain pertinent suspect information from the victim while treating his wounds and keeping him calm, as by that time he was starting to lose consciousness. The man was taken to local hospital in critical condition where he was rushed into surgery. It was later learned that the man would survive his injuries and that treatments rendered on scene were vital to the victim's successful outcome. For their efforts in saving this man's life, Officer Michael Cook, Ryan Cook, and Brian Kreitzman are awarded the department's life-saving medal. Ryan. Officer Daniel Cole and Officer Ryan Cook. Ryan Cook? Where's Cook? Officer Ryan Cook. On December 2nd, 2017, Officer Daniel Cole and Ryan Cook responded to a report of a stabbing in the 4600 block of Summit Arch. Upon arrival, they located the victim inside the residence, suffering from an apparent stab wound to the lower abdomen. Both officers immediately took action by applying gauze and pressure to the wound, in an attempt to stop the significant loss of blood that was occurring. EMS arrived on scene and transported the man to a local hospital. The on-duty police supervisor responded to the hospital and later spoke to the trauma team's attending physician, who praised the officers, stating that their quick thinking and the execution of applying pressure was a significant factor in saving the man's life. For these reasons, Officer Daniel Call and Ryan Cook are awarded the department's life-saving medal. Daniel. Officer Daniel Call and Officer Reed Lindau. Life-saving. On December 1st, 2017, multiple officers responded to a report of a gunshot wound in the 5800 block of Northampton Boulevard. They arrived on scene where they encountered several subjects. Officer Reed Lindau located an adult male suffering from a gunshot wound. Officer Call observed this and grabbed the medical go bag. Officer Lindau applied his issued combat application tourniquet while Officer Call used gauze and applied direct pressure to the entry wound. After applying the tourniquet, Officer Lindau then addressed the exit wound with gauze and pressure. Due to their quick thinking, concentration, and precise execution of rendering life-saving measures, Officer Reed Lindau and Daniel Call are awarded the department's life-saving medal. Officer Stephen Downing and Officer Che Provo, life-saving. Unfortunately, due to prior commitments, Officer Downing is unable to attend. On March 21st, 2017, Officer Downing and Provo responded to the 1200 block of Secretarian Run for a report of an overdose. The caller stated the victim had previously been having difficulty breathing and now had stopped breathing altogether. Officer Provo and Downing arrived at the scene and began CPR, taking turns doing chest compressions as they became tired. Officers Provo and Downey continued CPR until EMS arrived and took over the resuscitation efforts. After receiving 6 shocks from the AED and continuous CPR, the victim was converted and transported to a local hospital for additional treatment. For their quick response and performance in life-saving measures, Officer Downing and Provo are awarded the department's life-saving medal. Sergeant William Rutherford, Master Police Officer Andrew Dickman, MPO John Klein, Miss Rosita Smith, life-saving and citizen accommodation. Due to prior commitments, Sergeant Rutherford is unable to attend. On November 16, 2017, Miss Rosita Smith called emergency communications reporting that she was worried for the health and safety of her colleague who had not reported to work for 2 days, as she was unable to get in touch with him. The subject lived alone and had a variety of health conditions. Sergeant Rutherford was the first to respond, followed shortly after by Officer Dickman and Klein. Sergeant Rutherford took stock of the limited information available to him, and while there was some elements that indicated that the person may be inside in need of assistance, however, there was no way to know with any degree of certainty that that was the case. Using good judgment and taking a measured risk, Sergeant Rutherford made the decision to make a forced entry into the residence. Once inside, they located the semi-conscious victim lying on the bedroom floor. The man was having a medical emergency in which he could not walk, could not speak, could not move. EMS was called to the scene and transported the man to a local hospital. It was determined that he was suffering from an undiagnosed medical condition and would certainly have died without intervention. We extend our heartfelt thank you to Ms. Rosita Smith for her contribution to public safety and having the forethought to recognize the potential crisis and for taking the initiative to intervene. Because of this, she is being presented with the Department's Citizen Accommodation Award. And for their life-saving interventions, Sergeant William Rutherford, Master Police Officer Andrew Dickman, Master Police Officer John Klein are awarded the department's life-saving medal. Sergeant Aaron Gregg, MPO Ted Zaija, Officer Jasper Hamlin, Officer Benjamin Harper, Officer Brian Morgan, and Officer Chelsea Lindemeyer. Life-saving with valor and life-saving. Due to a prior commitment, Officer Zaija is unable to join us this evening. On August 11, 2017, officers were dispatched to 400 block of 21st Street for a pickup prisoner case. As officers arrived on scene, a person matching the suspect description fled on foot. MPO Zaija initiated a foot pursuit. When the suspect approached the 300 block of 20th Street, he suddenly stopped, turned to face the officers, and produced a knife. The suspect quickly placed the knife to his own neck and repeatedly threatened suicide. Several other officers arrived on scene and began speaking with the man in an effort for him to drop the knife. It quickly became obvious that the attempts to de-escalate the situation were not successful. Suddenly, the man took the knife and intentionally cut the side of his own neck, resulting in a large, gaping, deep wound, enough to sever his jugular vein. The man fell to the ground, still holding the knife. A large amount of blood immediately began flowing from the wound. Sergeant Gregg and Officer Harper and Morgan quickly approached the armed man, removing the knife from his hand, and immediately began first aid efforts. Officer Lindemeyer and MPO Zaija began opening the first aid supplies from their emergency medical go bag, providing them to Sergeant Gregg, who was able to slow the bleeding by applying gauze and direct pressure to the wound. Officers Hamill, Harper, and Morgan each added gauze to the significant injury while holding the suspect's head in a neutral position to maintain his airway. This team continued to render these critical life-saving efforts until rescue arrived to transport the man to the hospital where he was rushed into surgery. Due to the quick actions of this team of officers, this man's life was undoubtedly saved. For these reasons, Sergeant Aaron Gregg, Officer Benjamin Harper, Brian Morgan are awarded the department's Life-Saving with Valor Medal. MPO Theodore Zaija and Officers Jaspin Hamill and Chelsea Lindemeyer are awarded the department's Life-Saving Medal. MPO Paul Bryant, Officer Brian Fernick, Back Bay Officer Brian Bascabi. Medal of Merit, Special Commendation. On August 19, 2017, approximately 10 a.m., MPO Bryant attempted to stop a vehicle for reckless driving in the Sandbridge area. The vehicle was traveling at a high rate of speed on Sand Fiddler Road, swerving into oncoming traffic, nearly striking other vehicles and pedestrians. Due to the danger this posed to the citizens as well as responding officers in Sandbridge, the pursuit was terminated. Since the suspect vehicle was still in the Sandbridge area, several officers canvassed the area where the suspect vehicle was last seen. Officers Brian Fernick and Back Bay Police Officer Brian Ascoby were two of those officers. Officers located the suspect vehicle on Tuna Lane and the driver was still inside. The driver indicated to the officers that he was armed and that he would take his own life. Officers Bryant and Ascoby took up a visual on the driver using a neighboring balcony. This advantage allowed for a lethal and less lethal coverage. Utilizing his CIT skills, Officer Fennick began talking to the suspect in an effort to get him to surrender. Officer Fennick was able to develop a rapport with the troubled man, and it soon became clear that progress was being made when the suspect tossed the loaded weapon that he had in his possession out the vehicle window. The subject, however, indicated that he had a second weapon still inside the car. Negotiations continued, which ultimately led to the peaceful surrender. The second gun was located inside the car. After the man was taken into custody, it was learned that he had been reported recently from another jurisdiction, reported missing, and had stolen the weapons in order to presumably take his own life. The officers worked together in a cohesive unit to ensure the safety of the public as well as themselves. They exercised sound presence of mind in a much heightened situation. For these reasons, Officer Brian Fennick is awarded the department's Medal of Valor. Officer Paul Bryant and Officer Brian Moskibi are awarded the department's Special Commendation. Officer Miles Lewis, Officer Kyle Sherrick, Medal of Merit. On February 3rd, 2018, Officers Sherrick conducted a traffic stop for defective equipment near College Park Boulevard and Glendon Drive. When Officer Sherrick approached the driver, he could smell an odor of marijuana coming from the vehicle. Officer Lewis arrived to assist. Officer Sherrick began to communicate with the driver, who became uncooperative. The passenger then suddenly exited the car and ran. A foot pursuit ensued between the passenger and Officer Lewis. Officer Lewis was able to grab a hold of the passenger as he was about to enter a townhouse. Officer Lewis saw the suspect reach into his waistband. As Officer Lewis was attempting to take control of the suspect's hand, a gun fell out. Officer Lewis was able to pull the suspect's hand off the gun, retrieve it, and secure it on his own person. Officer Lewis was then able to hold the man down on the ground until his backup arrived to assist in handcuffing him. Meanwhile, Officer Sherrick had gotten the driver of the vehicle outside of his car and was attempting to detain him. He saw the suspect reach into his waistband. In order to control his movements, Officer Sherrick placed him into a bear hug. Officer Sherrick successfully got the suspect handcuffed, and after doing so, he located a fully loaded handgun, which its hammer was cocked back, in the man's waistband. Ultimately, the driver was charged with second-degree felony concealed weapon, and the passenger was charged with possession of a firearm by convicted felon, concealed weapon, and possession of marijuana with the intent to distribute, as well as a stolen firearm and obstruction of justice. This is an example of how simple a traffic stop can turn into a potentially deadly encounter. Due to the quick actions of Officer Kyle Sherrick and Miles Lewis, they are awarded the Department's Medal of Merit. Sergeant Adam Bernstein, Medal of Merit. At midnight on September 24th, 2017, 2nd Precinct officers were dispatched to the 2300 block of West Great Neck Road for a report of a suspicious vehicle that was parked at the dead end of a condominium complex. Officers located the car, occupied by one man. As they approached the car, the officers realized the man was armed with a shotgun, and through his words and actions, he intended on committing suicide. Sergeant Bernstein, the midnight supervisor, attempted to open a dialogue with the man as additional units arrived on scene. Information was obtained that the man was connected to an investigation being conducted in the 3rd Precinct. As this situation progressed, it was determined that it warranted a full call-out from Special Operations personnel to include SWAT in the crisis negotiation team. Upon arrival of the crisis negotiation team supervisor, it was determined that Sergeant Bernstein would continue his communications effort to try and come to a peaceful resolution, as he had already established an excellent rapport with the man. This was not an ordinary strategy for the crisis negotiation. However, it appeared that the suicidal man had become comfortable with Sergeant Bernstein. At this point, the incident had progressed beyond 2 hours. Throughout the remainder of the night and into the early morning hours, Sergeant Bernstein used various strategies to keep a dialogue open with the man. He worked through the anxiety and concern the man had regarding the arrival and positioning of the other department personnel. It should be noted that Sergeant Bernstein is not a trained crisis negotiator, and that all of these actions were conducted within 20 to 30 feet of the suicidal man. After daylight broke, and after 8 hours into the incident, Sergeant Bernstein continued to communicate with the man, and on several occasions, he tirelessly and repeatedly talked to the suicidal man into removing the shotgun from his mouth. Several times through this ordeal, Sergeant Bernstein was offered to be relieved, but determinedly continued to try and negotiate with the suspect. This incident had an unfortunate ending, as the man ultimately chose to take his own life. However, the extraordinary degree of personal and professional initiative by Sergeant Bernstein took by attempting to negotiate with this armed suicidal man in keeping with the highest standards and ideas of the Virginia Beach Police Department. For these reasons, Sergeant Adam Bernstein is awarded the department's Medal of Merit. Sergeant Gregory May, MPO Adrian Rodriguez, MPO Stephen Spivey, MPO Michael Ziegler, Officer Seth Hodgson. Blue Star, Silver Cross, and Life Saving with Valor. I would like to invite Chairman of the Virginia Beach Human Rights Commission, Raj Islam, to the stage as well. On December 13, 2017, officers were flagged down the 4700 block of Shore Drive by a citizen who reported that she had just been robbed and assaulted. Officers responded to the area and observed a person matching the suspect description running across Pleasure House Road towards an adjoining neighborhood in Victory Road. Approximately 10 minutes later, a domestic disturbance call was dispatched on Victory Road. The call indicated that the suspect, who matched the description of the suspect of the robbery, was armed with a knife. Sergeant Gregory May, MPO Michael Ziegler, and MPO Adrian Rodriguez responded to the dispute address. MPO Ziegler and Rodriguez located the suspect standing at the end of the driveway, partially in the street. He was ordered to show his hands and get on the ground. The suspect continuously refused to comply and then quickly turned to run. Officer Rodriguez grabbed the suspect and attempted to take him into custody. The man was violently resisting. Officer Ziegler joined Officer Rodriguez in the attempt to place the man in custody. During the struggle, the two officers and the suspect fell to the ground in the middle of the street. Sergeant May engaged by grabbing the suspect's legs as he was kicking and thrashing. While the suspect actively fought with officers, Officer Ziegler observed a knife now in the suspect's hand. MPO Spivey and Officer Hodgson arrived at the scene to assist. Sergeant May observed Officer Rodriguez holding his hand on his upper right thigh and heard him say that he's been stabbed. Sergeant May then saw what appeared to be blood flowing pool of blood saturating Officer Rodriguez's pants and collecting on the pavement. Sergeant May predicted that an artery had been cut due to the severity of the bleeding. Sergeant May immediately asked for the go bag, a tourniquet, and for EMS to respond. Within seconds, Officer Rodriguez began showing signs of shock and fading in and out of consciousness. MPO Spivey and Officer Hodgson assisted each other in applying a tourniquet to the thigh of Officer Rodriguez. Despite the tourniquet being applied, Officer Rodriguez was still bleeding profusely, so the battlefield dressing was additionally applied to the wound. Recognizing that minutes could make a difference in survival, Sergeant May directed MPO Spivey and Hodgins to carry Officer Rodriguez to a nearby police Tahoe in a preparation to transport him to a local hospital emergency room. EMS met them as they were en route to the hospital and assumed the transport to the hospital. As the life-saving efforts were being performed by Officer Rodriguez, MPO Ziegler continued the attempts to gain control of this violent suspect, eventually securing the weapon and successfully handcuffing the suspect, ceasing the violent attack. For injuries suffered during his efforts in arresting the combative suspect, MPO Adrian Rodriguez is awarded the department's Blue Star. For his bravery in the face of personal danger, MPO Ziegler is awarded the department's Silver Cross. For their efforts in rendering both physical and emotional aid to Officer Rodriguez while showing strength by keeping themselves composed, Sergeant Gregory May, MPO Stephen Spivey, and Officer Seth Hodgins are awarded the department's Life Saving with Valor Award. Officer John Hiblinski and Officer Norman Teague, Silver Cross. In the early morning hours of December 31st, 2017, Officers Hiblinski and Teague were dispatched to assist Virginia Beach Fire Department for a reported residential fire at Willow Lake Apartments. Officer Hiblinski was the first to arrive and observed orange and dark red flames coming from the roof of the residence. He was drawn to screams coming from the side of the building, where he observed two women trapped on the second floor balcony. As the flames grew and the black smoke thickened, Officer Hiblinski tried to climb the porch railing to scale the second floor balcony. The smoke, heat, and flames were now more intense, and he began choking on the smoke. Officer Hablinski told the woman to lie down and cover their faces as he directed the incoming fire department personnel to the location. Utilizing their specialized equipment, the fire department began rescue efforts to save the two women. Officer Teague now had arrived on scene, so he and Officer Hablinski began clearing each apartment to ensure everyone was out. Of the 8 apartments, only 2 were found to be unoccupied. The fire had now spread across the entire length of the second-story roof of the building. As the officers reached the last apartment, they were told by 2 of the residents that an older gentleman still occupied the apartment and was unable to exit on his own. With smoke pouring in on them, Officers Hablinski and Teague entered the second-story apartment, located the individual, and carried him downstairs to safety as flames began coming through the walls. Both officers were treated for smoke inhalation. Due to their quick response and the heroic acts that they took, Officers Hablinski and Teague saved the life of this elderly man, as well as aided in the evacuation of several other residents. For these reasons, they are being awarded the Department's Silver Cross. The Hampton Roads Chamber of Commerce is recognizing these 2 officers for their heroic efforts. Officers Ross Stolley, Officer Matthew Taylor, and Officer Joshua Williams, Silver Cross and Life Saving with Valor. On December 19, 2017, at approximately 30 minutes after midnight, the Virginia Aquarium security reported hearing someone screaming from the property. Officer Matthew Taylor responded and began canvassing the area. Officer Joshua Williams responded to assist. As they began searching the Owl Creek boat ramp area, Matthew heard a moaning noise coming from the direction of the water. As they shone their flashlights across the water, Matthew spotted a man submerged in the water holding onto a pylon near a pier. The man was sobbing and yelling that he had just killed his friend. Matthew told the man to swim towards the ramp, but the man began slipping under the water, and it was clear that the man was on the verge of being overcome by hypothermia. Matthew ran out onto the pier and down the ladder that goes into the water, grabbing the man's hand. As Matthew was able to pull the man up to the ladder and onto the pier, the man was taken to the patrol car. The heat was turned up full blast and was given a thermal blanket in an attempt to warm him up. As this was taking place, Officer Joshua Williams continued searching the water for the man that they had just saved, his friend. Joshua spotted the man floating face down a few yards out from the boat ramp. He also spotted the top portion of a vehicle which was fully submerged in the water. After radioing for additional officers to respond to the scene, Joshua immediately entered in the water and attempted to swim to the man floating face down. Again, this was on December 19th. He was able to swim a short distance, but was rapidly being overcome by the low water temperature. He had to return to shore before being compromised. By this point, Officer Ross Stolley arrived, as well as EMS. EMS had a rescue rope and readied it for Ross, who then took a hold of the end and entered into the water. He reached the man, took a hold of him, and yelled for EMS to pull him to shore. The man was unresponsive, and it was determined that he was in cardiac arrest. EMS began efforts. Both men were transported to a local hospital for treatment, where the man made full recovery. It should be noted that the exterior temperature that morning was 51 degrees and the water temperature was 43. For their bravery in the face of personal danger, Officers Ross Stolley and Joshua Williams are awarded the Department's Silver Cross. For his efforts in rendering physical aid and saving the man's life, Officer Taylor is awarded the Department's Life Saving with Valor. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for joining us today for this special occasion. Congratulations to all of the award recipients. And I would like to thank Ms. Catherine Baca with outdated photography for capturing today's special events. I'd also like to thank Ms. Becky Campbell, Ms. Rhonda Mitchell, Ms. Debbie Kopicki, and Ms. Michelle Ferranti for their assistance in preparing for today's ceremony. Following the benediction, please join us for refreshments in the cafeteria across the hall. At this time, we ask you to please stand for the close with the benediction. Chaplain Kramer.
Let's pray. Father, thank you for these ceremonies today. And Lord, these are just a tip of the iceberg of what our officers do every day. Thank you for these officers to keep us safe. And I pray that you would surround them with a hedge of protection as they go about their duties. In your holy name we pray. Amen.